Hey everyone. Colin started off with slavery. I'm going to start off with racism. My life as a foreigner has been a roller coaster ride of emotions. This adventure, however, comes with its own set of challenges. As it is difficult to learn a new language and new social norms, it took me a considerable amount of time to assimilate to my surroundings and to adapt to life in South Korea. But I eventually adapted to life in South Korea. Aside from the usual set of challenges commonly faced by foreigners abroad, there's a specific dilemma faced by several non-natives: xenophobia. Before I get into my experience with xenophobia, I just want to define what this big word is. Xenophobia, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is the dislike of or prejudice against people from other countries. Xenophobia is quite prevalent and is an issue that I definitely faced. To start, I just want to give a brief statistic on the foreign population in South Korea. Currently, there are 2.5 million foreigners in South Korea. Being a foreigner can be life-changing. All the experiences you gain hold valuable lessons which help you grow as an individual. Today, I'm going to share some of those experiences with you and the lessons I learned from them. My time in Korea started in 2010 when I was 1.5 years old. But since I don't remember much of my time then, we could fast forward to my kindergarten days at Daegu International School. 2013 was my first year at DIS. I vividly remember the first year I was accepted into DIS. Mr. Maestriani, then assistant headmaster, administered an admissions test asking me to identify colors, do some simple math, and enunciate words and phrases. As evident by my presence here, I was fortunate enough to enroll in the kindergarten grade at DIS. Kindergarten and elementary me was pretty naive in terms of the cultural differences that I was about to face. However, I had strong experiences with the pre-existing language barrier. My Korean terminology at the time consisted of 예 and 감사합니다. My cultural consciousness and awareness wasn't pretty strong at the time. I had to learn the language and mannerisms from scratch, and it took a considerable amount of time, but I learned to adapt to life in South Korea. Next was my middle school life. Middle school was my renaissance period. This is the time I started going out more, so I interacted with the Korean locals more, and I also made some Korean friends along the way. Along with my linguistic improvement at the time, because I went out, my cultural consciousness and awareness also grew. I started noticing the explicit differences, both physically and culturally, between myself and everyone around me. One of the physical things I noticed, obviously, was the distinction in physical appearance. In a culture where skin texture and tone are regarded highly of, and a fair and flawless complexion are regarded as symbols of beauty and elegance, I felt out of place. One of the cultural differences I noticed was hagwons. During middle school, a majority of my friends attended at least 2 to 3 school subject-oriented hagwons. I, however, attended none. Did I start falling behind? Did I start struggling with my academics? No and no. So then I started wondering, why do people go to hagwons if they aren't struggling and are going to learn the same things at hagwons prior to being educated at school? Later, I came to understand Korea's hagwon culture. Data from Statistics Korea and the Korea Education Ministry reported over $20 billion expenditure on private education in South Korea in 2022 alone. I discussed this culture, which was new to me, with my friends and family. Some of my friends believed that they needed hagwons to keep up with the academic pace, and some of my family members believed hagwons weren't necessary at all. But I understood that some people needed hagwons to keep up with the academic pace. In a study published in Innovation in Aging, Sawyer and colleagues found that The elderly are more likely than young adults to indulge in racist acts and have a xenophobic attitude. Moreover, the study focuses on how ageism may contribute as a factor to influence young adults' responses to xenophobic content. This information outstanded me because there was, in 2017, I experienced a memorable event, and it was pretty negative. I heard Korean elementary school students shouting racial slurs out to each other, and the racial slurs they used were so obscene that I don't wish to repeat them. I also learned that the main focus of xenophobia in Korea is not just directed towards people of dark skin tone, but of foreigners in general, whether they are Chinese, Japanese, or North American. These findings outstanded me because I learned that foreigners of all races will face some kind of racial bias, but the ones of darker skin tone will have it worse. Although I faced a lot of racial prejudice and discrimination throughout my life, I learned to cope with these acts of aggressions, and I learned to face them. My coping methods? Simple. I learned to develop a positive cultural identity and a strong sense of self. I recognized the misinformation these ostracizers were spreading and the lack of information they had. One of the biggest mistakes you can make while recognizing these acts of aggressions is avoiding and disengaging with them. This just leads to hopelessness and self-doubt. I want to end with one last advice. Embrace yourself and who you are. Life is a roller coaster. It has its ups and downs, but it's your choice to either scream or enjoy the ride. Thank you.